This is Leadership Beyond, your community of conversation. Joining us today is Michele Stowe. Michele is an executive coach and the founder of Skyrocket Coaching. Prior to starting Skyrocket Coaching, Michele was an HR and leadership development executive for over 20 years in for-profit organizations. She pivoted to nonprofit leadership, where she was the chief operating officer at Mercy Housing for 12 years. With Skyrocket, Michele continues her mission to help engaged leaders and nonprofit organizations realize their full potential. Michele lives, works, hikes, and skis in Colorado with her family. Michele interviewed 100 nonprofit C-suite leaders to ask them what behaviors have made them successful. From this research, she has crafted a framework, Listen, Lead, and Love Your Work, that she's presented in a white paper and now delivers as a keynote speech. What inspires me from our conversation with Michele is how intentionally she aligns her work and her life. So she's focusing her energy exactly where it re-energizes and charges her. Great lessons today from Michele. Welcome, Michele Stowe. Welcome, Michele. Thank you for joining us on this episode. I know we've been navigating calendars for a bit because you have such a great story to tell about why we have to navigate calendars, and we'll get into that. But just welcome. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Adrienne and Tom. Just delighted to be here. Thanks for welcoming me on.
So what we'd like to do is, we've been so impressed with how you align work with your life. Can you take us through that journey of just how you made that shift to really lean into, I won't call it a balance, maybe a harmony, right? But that alignment.
Thank you. And yeah, alignment is the right word, right? And it's about aligning as close as you can with your values. I want to begin by acknowledging that I absolutely come from a place of privilege. And so there are a lot of individuals for whom this sort of balance is much, much harder, much, much more elusive, right? So I appreciate everything that I have foundationally that has made this possible.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, I was not always in any way aligned with my values. I mean, I came out of the gate um, in corporate America. I wanted to be in human resources. I studied organizational psychology. And at that time in my life, I just wanted mastery. I wanted to know and be expert in something, right? I've got this education, just let me go do the thing. And gratefully, I had terrific jobs that gave me the opportunity to travel and learn and gain that mastery. And I would say that really motivated me for the first 15 years of my career. There was zero balance because my value and my focus at that time was mastery, right? And so I played a little bit, mostly my family is German and American. And so my German cousins would be like, you only have 2 weeks of vacation. You're like a prisoner. That is cruel. That is unusual. We have 6 weeks over here. What is wrong with you all? Right? And
Yeah.
Rub it
so
in, Michele. Rub it in.
We can still learn something from our European friends.
We absolutely can. And so year after year, they would take these amazing vacations. They'd come to the United States for a month and hang out with me and my family. And here I am with my like paltry 2 weeks of vacation thinking, okay, not now, but
ration that.
Right. It's like a day after Thanksgiving. It's the day, 2 days before Christmas. Woo, like just we're going to take some time wherever we can. And so as I moved through my career and began a family, that was really when it hit me in the face, right? Because I'm someone who, when I'm in the flow of something, I like to stay in that flow. My father used to call me a study of inertia, right? A body in motion stays in motion, a body at rest tends to stay at rest. That once I got going, I didn't want to stop, whatever it is. And so Do I enjoy 12, 14-hour work days? Yes, when I'm in the flow of it, I do.
Mm.
And so I found myself as a parent, partially responsible for pickup and drop off at school, clenching my teeth and just gritting out leaving work at 3 o'clock. When I was in the flow, when I was happy doing the work. And it's not that I didn't want to see my daughter. I didn't want her to be on the curb, the last kid picked up. Like, that's not cool. But it was really, once I was with her, yeah, you've got the backseat full
Then
of
you were
kids that are
flowing with
chitty
her.
chatting. Yeah, that I'm flowing with her. But that push pull of energy,
Mm,
I found really, really challenging.
mm, mm.
So as I I moved through working, I was at Mercy Housing as the chief operating officer. Great deal of travel involved in that work. And I was careful about ensuring that I was thoughtful about when I traveled. At the time, my family had divorced, and so my daughter was at one house and then the other. So I would travel on the weeks when she was with her father. That worked beautifully. And yet, there was still a major component missing, which was that fun, those 4 weeks of vacation that my German cousins were still taking. And so that then led to my consideration about if I'm going to launch a business. And I would hear from other coach friends of mine, "Oh, you'll never work so hard as starting your own coaching business. Like this, you think you're working hard now. You're going to be a chef, cook, and bottle washer.
Right.
You'll be doing everything and you'll be utterly overwhelmed. And so whatever you think is a long day, you don't know that yet." Oof.
Yeah,
And
you're C
so
everything, right? CFO, CMO, CEO, CTO.
exactly. And, scheduler and clerk and
Yes.
bookkeeper, right? You're right. You're
All the way
everything in
down.
the C
Uh-huh.
suite and you're everything else. And I thought, well, there's got to be a better way. There has to be a way to launch a business and honor something that I've wanted to honor for a very long time, which is taking the time. uh, Let me back up a little bit. I grew up in Germany, and my German grandmother survived 2 world wars and countless horrors throughout that experience. She emphasized to me so much when I was little, life is short. Live it. Every day is precious. And she would grab my little 5-year-old face and say these things, and I'm like, okay, thanks, Oma. Can I go play? But it really landed with me that at this moment in time, I have the opportunity to shape my life, to have it really be fulfilling, to have it represent my values, and to honestly do the things I want to do. I'm very outdoorsy. I like to be in my body. I like to be in the mountains. My hips and knees are only going to last so long
Mm.
to be able to do the things that I want to do. And so I took a great deal of time. I took 2 years to plan my departure from Mercy Housing out of my full time job, gainful employment, to start this business because I wanted to do it on my terms.
Mhm.
So that's the backstory. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Michelle, as I hear that, the fact that you made space to plan it out is
Yeah.
something that Adrian and I are doing a lot of work now and telling people that if you don't take some time to step back and look for what you want, you're going to be in reactive mode. The question I have for you is around energy. You not only have high energy, but you have a great quality of energy, the way you presence yourself. And we're noticing, there's so much overwhelm that the energy is I don't want to use the word stale, but there's something heavy about it. Talk a little bit about leadership and energy.
Oh, what a great question. Um, Most of the vast majority of my clients are nonprofit C suite leaders. And to your point about energy, one of them said to me the other day, which I think captures it, "I just don't want to keep leading in unprecedented times."
Mm.
She had led her organization through the pandemic. She was now leading through Just the uncertainty and the chaos of this current administration, right? And so wherever you fall on the political spectrum, the
There's shifts.
challenges for nonprofit leaders,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to know when there's unpredictability from funding sources for your community. So even if your organization has clear funding sources, the community that you're serving might not,
Right.
right? They may be losing jobs, they may be losing funding sources, they may be losing benefits that they had, access to medical services. It's just a question mark. And so as leaders, we really have to watch our energy and the self-care required to do that. I think, Tom, to your point, it's about intentionality. It's about really being thoughtful about where am I spending my time? How am I showing my people how I'm spending my time? Am I role modeling this for others so they can see they don't need to do it the way I'm doing it, right? I'm throwing on a backpack and going for a hike. That might not be what's restorative for someone else. Someone else might need to just play an instrument. Someone else might need to listen to music. Someone else might need to just take a walk or meditate or be with family. But to know yourself well enough to know what is actually restorative is really critical in these times for leaders. And that it takes time to really reflect on the patterns of your life and it changes, right? For me, restorative used to mean getting on planes and going and hanging out with friends in other cities. Go, 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 go. That is not restorative for me anymore. And so I think for folks to really be thoughtful about where am I now? What do I need? How do I lead in this moment and remember to find my breath?
That's beautiful. There's so much energy that goes in. I was thinking about your grandmother and what she lived through, how much energy goes into things we can't control. And then it's not available for the things that maybe we could impact together.
Oh, that's said so well, Tom, right? And I'm sure, Adrian, Tom, when you're working with your coaching clients, right, it's about helping them understand what is my locus of control?
Mm-hmm.
What can I really influence and what do I do with the things that I can't?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I have a choice. I just need to
Mm-hmm.
be aware of enough of what I'm doing to not doom scroll, right? To just put the phone down, walk away for a minute. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's finding recognizing that as a leader you are that role model. And so you can't be creating the tornadoes.
Exactly right.
And yet
Yeah.
you are in a position where you need to be directing. And so if you yourself are in this mode of directing, but never showing that we're going to step out of this potential for creating a tornado and give ourselves that moment,
Mhm.
you have to do that first, right? Of course, we know
100% right.
about, the fight and the flight response, right? So if you're creating that in your own body, what's coming out of your mouth is going to do that for everybody else.
No, that's
Right.
your behavior could trigger others.
Yeah.
And you're right. And then it becomes, more metaphors from the mountains, but it becomes an avalanche, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is about emotional regulation, right? And leaders are looked to for better or for worse. I mean, this is just the job. You are looked to be the calm in the storm. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right. Your loss of control, your temper, right? Whatever it is, tone, right? Sarcasm, who knows what that trigger could be, but it's electric and it can shoot across the mountain and then you lose the entire snow base, right? That entire organization could be triggered by one sidebar comment. But then immediately the water cooler talk, right? Are we losing our jobs? Are we safe here? Does Michelle not think that we can make it through this? What's happening? Like, what are they not telling us? It happens very, very quickly. And so, consistency, almost mind numbing consistency in your messaging to your team, right? Over and over, we're fine, we're going to be okay. Or I don't know if we're going to be fine, but we're building a plan
Yeah.
and you'll be a part of that, right? So that transparency is
Yes.
so important in these moments.
Yes. And have you seen within organizations you've worked with now, like from a culture perspective, I see organizations, I've been part of organizations where it's commended to be busy. It's commended to race down the hall, carrying all of your stuff, right? Because you don't have time to stop at your desk. I was one of those people, right? I looked like a girl with her hair on fire most days in the office, but there was a reward for that, right? Like, ooh, she's busy. She's making big deals. She's navigating all kinds of things. Look at her. And so there was this sense of pride by the end of the day because when I was racing like that, but yet I came home and I was wiped and I was no good to anybody, including myself. Right. But that was the culture. So have you experienced that, worked with organizations or leaders in that? And what advice might you have for how do you break that cycle? Like because maybe we don't have a choice to leave that environment, but this isn't working for me. It's really not working for the company, but I'm only one person in the threads of this whole culture.
Oh, yes. And Adrienne, do we have a whole day to unpack this? It is such a
It's a
great
workshop, right?
conversation. It really is. And there's so much cultural shift that we're in the midst of now too, generationally, right?
Yes.
Around sort of work culture and expectations. I mean, I used to joke, we used to talk about, first car in the parking lot, last car out, right? Was like an indication. I'm like, well, that's, how quaint is that now?
Now, could we please
Right.
see that as crazy?
And it was even then, right? And so there
We got
are
brownie points for coming in sick, Michelle. When I was a young
Yes.
professional, you're sneezing all over the place, and then you were someone who just toughs it out.
yes, yes. I mean, God, all of us did, right? We carried our germs through airports, on
I
planes,
never
in
take a sick
hotels.
day. I'm half dead.
Right.
Or now you can be sick and still work from home, right? So you won't make anybody sick, but
I-
you're making yourself sicker because
right.
you're
Because I'm
still at
still
your
on
desk.
Zoom
Yeah.
hacking and coughing and
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yes, there are, and what I see in my clients, there are for sure cultural differences by geography, right? So where in the world are you?
Mhm.
Is the expectation of what work looks like and what good work, right? In quotes, because it is good work that I'm here all the time and I'm running from meeting to meeting and my response to an email is within 20 minutes, right? Is that sort of energy, that frenetic response, right? Is that rewarded? Or is thoughtful, introspective, taking your time, I'll get back to you, rewarded? Well, that's also cultural globally. Now bring it down, it's different cultural by sector or industry. And then even further within that by company, right? So one pharmaceutical firm to another could be an entirely different work culture and alignment. Now, add to this crazy cake that we've just baked generational differences and expectations of different generations of the workforce about what is restorative and what time do I need, and you have an incredibly complicated mix. The best advice I have for leaders truly is to acknowledge and understand the cultural dynamics that you're operating in, know them, be able to articulate them, and then you make a decision. Do you fit there first?
Mm,
Is this, to your point, Adrienne, is hair on fire running from meeting to meeting something that energizes me? Is this where I want to be? Do I want to hire more people that like that? And so I
mhm,
can represent it well and then bring them in?
mhm.
Or is this not me at all? And I do really thoughtful about aligning my values with the culture of the organization. And so I am seeing, and that most especially post pandemic, organizations trying to be more thoughtful about not corresponding with employees on weekends and evenings. You might even see some people have email sort of notes at the end of their emails that say, even if you're getting this email after work hours, don't feel the need to respond.
Mm.
which I'm thinking, okay, just delay send.
But
But
you've role modeled that you sent the email. I mean, but work hours can be different,
right.
right? So there's some of that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I for a lot of my leaders, the conversations are about really understanding your motivation and understanding the motivation of the team members that you have. And what do you really need from them? Right? Is it keystrokes? Right? There's a lot of monitoring systems out there now that are monitoring keystrokes of remote employees. And then in some cases, actually punishing them for working too fast or too efficiently, depending on what the quota is for the day of work. I mean,
Hmm.
we have to stop and really think about, what does success look like for our organization? And I'll give an example back to the topic where we started about time off. When I joined Mercy Housing, you begin with a pretty substantial bucket of vacation time, largely because we knew that as a nonprofit organization, I can only go so far with how much I pay people, right? So I can balance the offer package with time off. And I thought, okay, well, that's a nice gesture coming from for profit into non. I'm thinking, okay, well, I've got it, but I might not ever use it. Well,
Yeah. Right.
people were planning 3 and 4 week vacations to different parts of the world and openly talking about it, excited to share, oh, what train did you take to get from point A to point B, and tell us all about your vacation when you get back. There was a very real organizational support for taking the time off and not working yourself to death. And it was a phrase that our former CEO, Sister Lillian Murphy, used to always say: our work is hard. Take care of you.
Hmm.
And so,
This would be a good point,
yeah,
Michelle, because you've
yeah,
given some good tips here to introduce your framework, listen, lead, and love your work, and
yeah.
really talk about how you can dig in anywhere and start to make small changes. And you're really talking about impacting the culture, because I'm reminded there's companies that change the policy, but you better not take paternity leave, even though you're entitled to it. And so impacting the culture uh, is really, you got to start small sometimes.
No, that's absolutely right, Tom. And thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, when I first launched my business, I was being asked by folks, what is your advice? And I'm thinking, well, geez, like, I may be a former nonprofit executive, but I'm just an N of one. What do I know? So I decided to interview 100 nonprofit leaders, C-suite leaders who'd been in their roles for more than 5 years, because I was like, all right, let you tell me what's the secret sauce. And the result was a white paper called Listen, Lead, and Love Your Work. I've now turned that into a keynote as well, because my clients were asking me to come talk about the paper, because to Tom's point, so much of this is about, as leaders, understanding the impact of our behavior on the culture. And so one of the biggest lessons, and that's why it's the first word of the white paper, was about listening. You've heard me say this already, right? Is meet with folks, understand their motivations, know for yourself what's happening in an organization and what's the energy level of your team. If you're not synchronized, you will lose the race. And so that focus on listening, everything from how are folks feeling about time off, to how are folks feeling about needing to wear masks, to fast forward, how are folks feeling about uncertainty in our funding sources. We have to listen as leaders to then know, how do I need to be responding,
Hmm.
right? And so if I come off as super calm when everyone else is freaking out and I don't acknowledge how hard things are, then I'll come off as tone deaf, right? So I
Hmm.
also, as a leader, need to be really aware of, I don't need to match unhealthy energy, but I need to at least acknowledge it,
Hmm.
and share with the organization that I've heard them, that I understand the concerns, and here's what we're doing about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's step one, right?
Yeah. It it has to
Listening.
start there. It has to start
Listening.
there. Yeah.
And I often say, almost every performance or business issue can be distilled down to communication, right?
Mm. That's exactly
It
right.
really is the foundation. I know we preach it, we get on our pedestals, but really that it's genuinely listening to understand, to be curious, to acknowledge and appreciate the lens someone's wearing. Yeah.
I agree fully, Adrienne. As leaders, we are the least important person in the room.
Mhm.
And we have to remember that humility serves us well as leaders. Because to your point, I need to keep listening,
Mhm.
asking questions, digging in, and truly coming from a place of curiosity, even if I disagree, or, you know, if I'm hearing something that hits the ego, right? The decision that I made a few weeks ago isn't landing the way I had expected. I need to stay there and keep
Yeah.
listening and keep asking the questions.
Communication becomes sadly pushing out messages. So people say, we got to communicate more. So you get twice as many emails, as though the fact you hit send means that there's any dialogue going on.
And so
Right.
there's a self-awareness component to that too, right? Understanding how you're being perceived and the lens you're wearing and
Mhm.
how that's impacting what you're seeing and interpreting too, right? Which that kind of gets into the lead part of your
Right.
framework.
Right, right. And that self-awareness, and we talked about it earlier, right? The second behavior that I heard was about role modeling self-care, right? And we had talked about that earlier, but some of this is about knowing yourself well enough to know, am I ready for this listening session?
Oh yeah,
Do I have
that's a
the
good
right,
one.
did I sleep well
So
last night?
important.
Right? Did the 3-year-old keep me up all night? Right? And so I'm not in a place where I can show up fully
Yeah,
present, then maybe don't have the town hall. Right? And
yeah,
really be thoughtful about how you're showing up and knowing that you can be your best. We don't need to be perfect. We just need to be able to show up. And if
yeah.
for whatever reason we can't, we need to know that and call it.
And imagine the bravery that it takes to display. You've scheduled a town hall, you're a leader, but you just, it's not a day for you to take that in,
Mhm.
to acknowledge that and to reschedule it. I mean, that would be, to me, that would be profound. I would have so
Yeah.
much respect for a leader that did that when it could be. I mean, that means you've created all kinds of work for the people behind the scenes who get to reschedule that town hall, right?
That's
So
right.
make sure you acknowledge that if you do a last minute
Hmm.
reschedule. But
Hmm.
wow, that's powerful role modeling.
And if the world around you has shifted, so if you're not in a
Yeah.
good place, if you don't have good answers for what just came up in the news cycle today, wait. Wait,
Mhm.
it's not the end of the world. Be ready for that communication and be ready for the listening that has to come to do it
Mhm.
right. I have a great example of that kind of vulnerability when when I joined Mercy Housing. Part of the reason I was asked to join the organization was to help the board with the succession planning of the founder, who also happened to be a Catholic sister. And the board was sort of freaking out, right? Like, if she leaves, the moral compass of the organization is in question. And she had grown the organization from a handful of properties to $3.2 billion in assets by the time she retired. So, a remarkable CEO and human being. So we worked on the succession plan. Jane Graff was selected to be the next CEO of Mercy Housing. And so we did a roadshow from in every community. We were in the great city of Chicago. We were in Kenosha when members of the Wisconsin team, right, were called together into a property. And so we had everyone. We had leasing agents, we had property managers, we had maintenance techs, all in the room together. It was probably about 200 people. And I set the stage in Wisconsin because the maintenance crew in Wisconsin, right? They're either wearing Packers jackets or they're wearing lumberjack shirts. Like, this is the option of fashion wear. So you have this wall of maintenance folks on the back wall. And Jane, in that meeting, shared with everyone that she was beginning to feel the enormity of the job. She knew it was a big job. She had been with the organization for years. And she said to them, I may be holding this job, but I need all of you.
Mm.
I need your help in order for me to be successful. And so this was fully unprompted, off script. And it was beautiful because she basically said, I can't do this alone. I need all of you. And from the back, this like 6'4" lumberjack of a guy in a Packers jacket, right, goes, "We got you, Jane."
Oh, that's a great story.
And we all immediately started to cry, all of
That's
us,
beautiful.
right? Because it was one of those moments where, as a leader, it is so important for us to be as real and vulnerable and transparent as we can be about the work. And then folks will feel like they can be a part of your success and theirs. It
Mhm.
was a beautiful moment. It was, yeah, yeah.
Well, we
And
only
I,
have time
yeah,
for one more question. Thank you so much for joining us today. I always
sure.
have to be the evil taskmaster, Adrian.
I'm terrible at
So I'll
telling
let you
time.
ask the question.
Well, I would love to know about the dragon boats.
Oh,
So that's a total pivot, but I know that you
That's
can
a
bring
good
it all
pivot.
in, right? Because
I
that's
love
just such
it.
a unique thing that you do. And when I was reading about in one of your articles about the dragon boats, oh, so tell us
Yeah,
about the dragon boats and what
sh-
you glean from that from a leadership perspective. We can bring it back
sure.
together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adrian. So I have had the great pleasure to be a drummer and a coach on a dragon boat team now for 12 years. And, I'm in Denver, Colorado, in landlocked Denver, Colorado. We have the nation's largest dragon boat festival, right? Who knew? In dragon boating, you have 22 people on a very slim, very tippy boat. You have a stern, a drummer, and then 20 paddlers. So think about like a canoe paddle. It's not an oar, it's like a canoe paddle down off the side. So synchronicity is everything to ensure that a boat of 22 people, right, can win a race, can even start from stop. It's about 2,000 pounds of boat and humans that you
Wow.
have to lift up out of the water and hopefully win the race. Um, I have found so many beautiful metaphors in this, but I'll share one of my favorites, which is about the listening that we talked about earlier. Dragon boating has this lovely tradition where once you start the race, right? So the drummer begins the race from the starting gun or the horn, and you have to get the boat moving. You need that forward momentum, right? But once you have that momentum going and you've set the pace, the drummer's job is to now listen to the rest of the boat.
Mm.
Anyone in the boat, this will sound a lot like Kaizen if you're familiar with that model.
Mhm.
Anyone on the boat is empowered to say lengthen.
Mm.
When they say lengthen, let's say they're in the last row. I'm not hearing them from the drum and the cacophony of water and other boats. The rowers on the boat need to then repeat that word lengthen up the front of the boat until I hear it. So again, I'm the least important person on that boat in that moment. They need to be able to get a synchronized full paddle stroke. Lengthen, 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 and then I recount the pace. Usually means
Mm.
slowing it down just a touch so that everyone can feel like they're getting a full paddle stroke and stay synchronized. This for me is such a sign of how a team of 22 people can ensure that all voices are heard.
Yeah.
We have the ability in any team that we lead to create that lengthen call, to allow our team to tell
Mm.
us the pace is too fast, it's not working for me, we need to do something different.
Mm.
And it's a lot of fun. There's usually great food, just saying.
It's hard work and fun, and that comes to
It
love your
is.
work. Part of the model.
It is. It
Yes.
is exactly right. Exactly right. And if we don't do these things, like work becomes joyless, right? Adrian,
It
right?
can.
We start running from meeting to meeting.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I have joked that I started a business around the idea that work shouldn't be a four-letter word.
That's exactly right. And so, to wrap us up where we began,
Yeah.
as I launched my business, I decided that I would be adding 2 weeks of vacation to my own plan every year until I retire.
Ooh, I
And so
love
in
that.
2024, I took as the founder of Skyrocket Coaching with my clients and all, 20 weeks of vacation. This year, 2025, I'll be measuring my own revenue targets as well as days off. That's my double bottom line. 22 weeks of vacation this year. And it's all about the intentionality of how you do it, how you work with your clients to still meet their expectations and needs, and balance that with what you might need.
And the measure of success can be different, right? So one of your measures, it's not always just the revenue, right? It's the ability to take the 22 weeks this year.
Yeah.
That is your measure, one of your measures of success.
That's right.
And aligning that with equal weight, or maybe even more weighted to how much revenue do I bring in?
That's right.
Yeah. I love that.
That's truly inspiring, as are you at all times, Michele. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Adrian. I really appreciate being here today. Thank you.
What a great conversation. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Beyond podcast. We hope you benefited from this conversation as much as we have. We invite you to join our community of conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to sign up at aleadershipbeyond.com for free materials and updates. That's aleadershipbeyond.com. Join us in 2 weeks for our next episode.